All-Round View by Khan Imran, published in 1988 by Chatto and Windus Limited, 30 Bedford Square, London. All rights reserved. Copyright Imran Khan, 1988. Topics: Biography, Sports, Cricket, Pakistan, Khan, Imran, Cricket players, Autobiography, Cricket biographies. Chapter 2: Winter in England. I spent my first English winter at Worcester Royal Grammar School. I had first felt homesick when the team went back to Pakistan in the middle of July. But when the winter set in, I really began to miss Lahore and my family. It was hard enough getting back to my studies after a long lay-off, and I was trying to finish a 2-year course in just 9 months. But I think it was the English winter rather than the strange environment that got me down so. Worst of all were the dark skies and the constant drizzle. Still more so since winter in Pakistan has the best weather of the year. The only good thing was that the weather was conducive to study, as I hated going outdoors. For the first time in my life, I was experiencing short days and no sunshine. I particularly remember being hungry for so much of the time. After lunch on my first day, I was already waiting for dinner, and when I felt completely famished, I asked when it would be. I almost died when I was told that tea basically consisted of bread and that of what they call dinner was what I call lunch. Since I was used to 3 cooked meals a day, I had no option but to patronize a shop near the school. 3 months after starting at Worcester RGS, I began to bowl again in the school gymnasium, trying to improve my action. I wasn't getting anywhere until the New Zealander John Parker suggested that I take a small jump before delivering the ball so as to get more side on. Although he wasn't impressed by my efforts and suggested that I revert to my original style, I persevered. My action improved. My run-up became more rhythmic and I found I could bowl the occasional leg cutter. As a result, I approached my first county season in England with a little less trepidation. When playing second 11 cricket for Worcestershire, the senior county players were unimpressed by my bowling, although my batting won some praise. Glenn Turner in particular thought I would never be a fast bowler. I languished in the second team where I found the cricket dull and uninspiring. The 2 men who had signed me had left the county and the new management had not only registered John Parker ahead of me but reduced my wages. Since the county could not register another overseas player, I now had to get into Oxford, which would entitle me to automatic registration or go back to Pakistan. Luckily, even if my stay at Worcester had done nothing for my cricket, it had done enough for my A-level grades to get me into Oxford. I entered Keble College in 1972 and started playing for Oxford University in 1973. After school, Oxford was wonderful education in the complete sense. Apart from the studies, the quality of which is undisputed, there was so much more one could do there. There were so many societies to join and so many things to do that the 8-week term seemed far too short. It was while I was at Oxford that I first became aware of the English class system. In Pakistan, class seems more clearly defined, whereas in England it seems subtle, at least to an outsider. What I enjoyed most at Oxford was the cricket. The atmosphere was similar to that in which I had grown up and which I had always enjoyed. Cricket was played competitively, but it was meant to be enjoyed and was never treated as work. The boys were of similar ages and educational backgrounds, so getting along with them was easy, whereas when I played professional cricket, except for 1 or 2 short periods in Pakistan and at Sussex, I very rarely found other players with the same approach to the game, if only because our backgrounds and age groups were so varied. My first year at the Parks was one of the most enjoyable ever, even though from time to time my studies were inevitably affected by my cricket. I opened the bowling for the university and batted at number 4. Oxford's bowling resources were limited, so I had the chance to put in some long spells. At Worcester, where I played in the second half of the season, I was still considered an erratic batsman and a stock medium pace bowler, just about an all-rounder. In 1974, I was elected captain of Oxford. This was my first experience of captaincy at any level, and I found that the responsibility improved my cricket greatly. I hit 100 in each innings against Nottinghamshire, 160 and 49 against the Indian Tourist, and 170 against Northants in a match which we won. As for my bowling, I was once again trying to bowl fast. At Worcester, my efforts at fast bowling were looked on with scorn, and I had been bullied into bowling medium pace line and length, stuff which didn't suit my temperament. As Oxford's try bowler, I was free to follow my natural instincts, particularly as we needed some form of retaliation against the liberal dose of bouncers which our batsmen were receiving. My form at Oxford led to my being included in the Pakistani team that was to tour England in the later part of the 1974 season. By now, I thought of myself as a high-order batsman who could bowl, and this was how I was regarded on the county circuit. I felt that despite my extra pace and improved control with the ball, my original idea of myself as a cricketer was being vindicated after what had been no more than a brief detour. The Pakistan selectors had different ideas about my role in the team. Our batting lineup was so strong that there was no question of my batting above number 7 or 8. I was chosen for all the 3 tests as the third seamer behind Sarfraz and Asif Masood, and as a competent lower order batsman. I was used as stock bowler, in which capacity I put in long spells and get a few wickets. In the first test at Leeds, I battled well in crisis in both innings. In a low-scoring match, I made 23 and 31 and helped the tail to put on almost 100 runs for the last 4 wickets in each innings. My overall performance on the tour had been adequate, and there was no longer any reason for my being thought of as a passenger in the side. Yet aside remarks were still being made about my connections and statements to the effect that better players had been left behind in Pakistan. My age and background and the publicity I got as an Oxford player probably created some resentment. Nonetheless, despite the occasional carping, I enjoyed the tour. We had a good competitive team that went through the tour unbeaten. Although all the 3 tests were drawn, we demolished the counties and swept the one-day internationals. In 1975, I gave up the Oxford captaincy to concentrate on my final exams, which coincided with the first World Cup. I was selected for the World Cup squad and was expected to play in the last of the group matches if we made it to the semi-finals and the finals. I was asked to play against the Australians on a Saturday, and I still had 3 players left on Monday and Tuesday. 3 papers left on Monday and Tuesday. I left for Leeds on Friday after my exams and got there at 4 a.m. on Saturday. I played the match with hardly any practice and was back in Oxford at 3 a.m. Not surprisingly, I got flu. On Tuesday, one of the outstanding World Cup matches took place between Pakistan and the West Indies, with Pakistan losing by 1 wicket. My interest quickly switched from my papers to the cricket, for I was desperately anxious to qualify for the semi-finals. Unfortunately, we lost to the West Indies and were eliminated. My 3 years at Oxford were both useful and detrimental to my development as a cricketer. I missed 3 test series and I missed 3 test series and most of the first World Cup, nor did I take part in our domestic cricket seasons, with the result that I ended up playing for less international and first-class cricket than I might have done, which undoubtedly hindered my progress as a fast bowler. On the other hand, playing for Oxford renewed my belief in my abilities at a time my confidence was in its lowest. More importantly, I acquired the ability to think logically, and this helped me to analyze both my own game and cricket in general. I guess the advantages outweighed the disadvantages simply because what I gained was real, and whatever I might have lost is pure conjectural. I had a miserable season with the bat for Worcestershire in 1975, averaging about 10 runs. I couldn't play the hook shot, a serious shortcoming for an attacking batsman. As a fast bowler, a Pakistani and an Oxbridge graduate, I received more than my share of bouncers. Over the years, I have noticed that county bowlers are always keen to bowl bouncers at university players. It's a way of putting them in their place. When I returned to Pakistan in the winter of 1975, I was determined to learn the hook shot, which was even more vital at home. In Pakistan, the ball doesn't swing much after the shine has gone, and even medium pacers resort to 2 or 3 bounces and over. I found a simple and effective method of practicing the stroke. I asked a young member of the Lahore Gymkhana staff called Hanif to throw bouncers at me in the nets from a distance of 15 yards. For half an hour each day, I did nothing but practice the hook shot. I had a lot of narrow escapes, the ball missing my head by inches on numerous occasions. In a couple of months, I had learned how to cope with the short pitch delivery. My bowling also developed in the right direction. In England, one could pitch the ball up and the condition to do the rest. But in Pakistan, this wasn't enough, as there is no movement of the seam. This meant bowling fast and straight. I was the highest wicket taker in the domestic season and man of the series in a short, unofficial test series in Sri Lanka. Back in England in April for the 1976 season, I felt a lot more confident of my batting and bowling. This was reflected in the very first county match against Warwickshire, where I made 143 on a fast pitch against an attack that included Bob Willis. Worcestershire promptly confirmed my place at number 4 in the batting order. My success as a batsman also allowed me to shake off the medium-pace straitjacket into which Worcestershire had stuffed me. Until then, my place in the team had depended on my performance as a stock bowler, and I had no option but to bowl in swingers of a run-up of 7 or 8 paces. In 1976, I decided to ignore instructions and started bowling fast. That summer was one of the hottest in years, and the pitches were harder and had more bounce. With the hook shot securely under my belt, I now returned bouncers to all those who had bombarded me during the previous seasons. To begin with, fast bowling was more a means of avenging myself than taking wickets. I often overdid the bouncer, sometimes bowling 3 or 4 an over, and developed something of a reputation on the county circuit. But the consistent use of the bouncer increased my pace as my body got stronger from the extra effort, and in the middle of season, Norman Gifford started giving me the new ball. My best performance was in the match against Lancashire. I made 111 not out and took 13 wickets. At the end of the season, I was presented with Weatherall Award for the best all-rounder. I had taken 65 wickets and averaged 40 with the bat. Among the Pakistanis playing county cricket that season, my batting average was only bettered by Zaheer Abbas. This was no mean achievement since they included Sadiq and Mushtaq Muhammad, Asif Iqbal, Majid Khan and Intikhab Alam. It came as something of a surprise when, on returning to Pakistan, I found that I had been relegated to number 9 in the batting order for the first test against New Zealand at Lahore. We were easily the better team and won the first 2 tests with a day to spare. In this series, I was given the new ball on a regular basis for the first time. I bowled my best spell in Test cricket to date in New Zealand's second innings at Lahore, taking 4 wickets. Clean bowling, Glenn Turner for 1 with a quick delivery was particularly satisfying. At Worcester, he had said that I didn't have it in me to become a fast bowler. I also dismissed that other Worcestershire doubter, John Parker, 4 times out of 6. Although I got my first test 50, my batting remained largely under wraps because of our powerful lineup. Basically an orthodox high-order batsman, I found it difficult to adjust to the requirements of batting lower down the order. I left Worcester for a quite straightforward and, I feel, perfectly legitimate reason. I just didn't enjoy myself in the town. It is no disrespect to Worcester but a reflection of my own way of life. I had no close friends. Either the players were married and had their own lives, or they were unmarried and spent their evenings in pubs. Since I cannot stand pub life, being a teetotaler, I left Worcester for a quite straightforward and, I feel, perfectly legitimate reason. I just didn't enjoy myself in the town. It is no disrespect to Worcester, but a reflection of my own way of life. I had no close friends. Either the players were married and had their own lives, or they were unmarried and spent their evenings in pubs. Since I cannot stand pub life, being a teetotaler, I was lonely and bored. When I explained this to the club chairman, He could not understand my reasoning. He began by assuming that some club had offered me an enormous sum of money, after which he suddenly asked me if I was leaving because I couldn't find enough girls in the town. Later on, to my amusement, he made the same statement to the press. No wonder I was given a playboy image. I have never since experienced the sense of excitement and anticipation that I felt before the 1976 to 1977 tour of Australia and the West Indies. The senior players who had toured Australia in 1972 to 73 were unanimous in their admiration for Australian cricket. The competitive and aggressive attitude of the players, the excellent facilities, the knowledgeable and vociferous crowds, the hard, fast pitches. It was bound to be an exhilarating tour. We were going to take on easily the best team in the world in the best place to play cricket. For a young man eager to carve a name for himself, this was the ideal opportunity. The whole team, in fact, were anxious to prove themselves at the highest level. We arrived in Australia to find that we were not rated very highly, and our first match in Perth seemed to confirm their low opinion of us. Western Australia needed 333 to win in 4 hours and managed it with ease. Dennis Lilly claimed in his newspaper column that they would walk all over us. He thought we had a few good batsmen and included me in this category. But as far as bowling was concerned, he dismissed me as a medium pace trundler who was not going to give anyone much trouble, and added that our seam bowling as a whole was not test class. At Adelaide, we won the toss and batted first on a typical Australian pitch. With a little bounce, it was excellent for stroke play. Lilly and Thompson, the duo which had destroyed England and the West Indies, soon had us in trouble. Then Thompson, trying to catch Zaheer off his own bowling, collided with Alan Turner and dislocated his shoulder, after which he was out of the match and the series. Zaheer went on to make 85, I contributed 48, and we reached 272. It was not much considering the pitch and the depleted attack, but more than had seemed possible when we were 157 for 6. The Australian innings confirmed everything that had been said about our seam bowling. Sarfaraz, Salim Altaf and I were hammered all over the place. I took only 1 wicket for 92 runs and still hadn't worked out how to bowl on Australian wickets. Bowling within the stumps was useless. The ball did not seem much, and the Australians, superb on-side players, scored off me at will. Australia made 454 and the onus was now squarely on our top order batsmen. They responded magnificently and we fought all the way down the order. Zaheer and Asif Iqbal hit hundreds, Asif playing the innings of the series. Coming in at 236 for 4, he took Pakistan to 466 and remained unbeaten with 152. Asif and Iqbal Qasim, who made 4, added 87 runs for the 10th wicket. With 285 to win, Australia were cruising at 200 for 3. The wicket was spinning a bit on the last day. Qasim, supported by Javed Biadat's leg spin, had not let the Australian batsmen score quickly, and we had given nothing away in the field all day. When Qasim dismissed Greg Chappell, he initiated a mini collapse, and Australia required 56 runs of the last 15 overs. with 4 wickets in hand. Gary Cozier and Rodney Marsh chose to play out time and finish 24 runs short. The crowd felt that Australia had chickened out and made plain their disapproval of their batting. The press and the public now revised their opinion of our team, and the series was no longer seen as a walkover. Our seam bowling, however, was still considered below par, and the second test at Melbourne seemed to prove that their original assessment of the team in general and our pace bowling in particular had been accurate. Despite the overcast condition, the Australian chose to bat. Sarfraz was unfit and I shared the new ball with Salim Altaf. With the ball really swinging, I just couldn't get it right. When I bowled fast, I lost control, but if I tried to bowl line and length, I failed to penetrate. After the Australian openers had put on 134, the cloud cover slowly lifted and their batting made mincemeat of our attack. I could see that the team felt the seamers had really let them down. Australia declared at 517 for 8 and our batsmen reached 270 for 2 on what was now an easy-paced pitch. Then Lilly destroyed our middle order after taking the second new ball with one of the best spells of fast bowling I have ever seen. He finished with 6 for 82 and we were dismissed for 333. In their second innings, I decided that I was going to go flat out, whatever the consequences. I was fed up with being hit trying to concentrate on the line and length. I managed to work up a good speed with an off-stump line. Some of the Australian batsmen were surprised. Marsh was late on a hook shot and got hit on the head. I took 5 for 122 in an Australian total of 315 for 8 declared. But in the second innings, our batting collapsed and we lost the match by 348 runs, the heaviest defeat by a runs margin in our cricket history. We went into the third test at Sydney determined to show that we were not the rabbits that the Australian press had once more decided us to be. Lilly, who had bowled us out on the easy-paced pitch at Melbourne, was visibly licking his lips at the prospect of bowling on the hard green Sydney wicket. He said as much and to some extent succeeded in psyching us out. Mushtaq was certainly rattled and we went into the match with only 3 specialist bowlers, 2 spinners and a spinner and an extra batsman. This strange selection was typical of the defensive style of most Pakistani captains. The fear of losing had dominated Pakistan's cricket for so long that the tactic of packing the team with batsmen was an established practice. Greg Chappell won the toss and once again demonstrated his contempt for our fast bowling by choosing to bat in humid conditions on a well-grassed pitch. This time I got it right and with Sarfraz dismissed Australia cheaply. The run-up at Sydney suited me. It sloped gently towards the wicket, helping me to gain momentum without expending too much energy. The run-up had a lot to do with my rhythm at this stage. My action was not yet fluent enough and I needed a good approach for everything to click into place. Even now, a good run-up helps me. At Sydney, I was able to bowl fast and accurately for long spells. Australia made 2-1-1 in the first innings and I took 6 for 102. Our batting also gave them a shock. We were supposed to roll over at the very sight of Dennis Lillee, and at 111 for 4, this seemed likely. Then Asif Iqbal, for the second time in the series, went into his Into the Valley of Death routine and made a remarkable 100. This was the third such innings he had played for us in a matter of months. Harun Rashid and Javed Miandad both got 50s and helped Asif to take our score to 360. Harun in his test debut played a gritty and accomplished innings of 57 and stood up to Lillee at his fastest when Australia took the second new ball. We had taken a sizable lead and for the first time in the series the Australian batting was coming under pressure. I put everything into my bowling and bowled unchanged for almost 4 hours, so much that my shirt sleeve came off from the effort and the sweat. The Australian batting tittered and then collapsed to 99 for 7. Tail and resistance from Marsh and Lillee saved them from an innings defeat, but we won by 8 wickets on the 4th day. I took 6 for 63 in the second innings and had a match analysis of 12 for 165. This was a turning point for me and for Pakistan cricket. We had achieved Pakistan's first test victory in Australia and drawn the series. Suddenly we were a team to be reckoned with, and the shock waves of our victory reached the West Indies, where people were anticipating a thrilling series. As a result of the Sydney Test, some commentators had made rather exaggerated comments about my bowling process, saying that at times I bowled as fast as Lillee. When I arrived in the West Indies, Sir Gary Sobers took one look at me and said, "If he's as quick as Lillee, then Lillee must have been bowling at half pace." Every West Indies club possesses a fast bowler, and they are not easily impressed. As I mentioned earlier, I could only bowl consistently fast when everything fell into place, and this didn't happen at all often in the West Indies. When we arrived, we thought there would only be one fast bowler, Andy Roberts, to contend with, since Michael Holding was injured and was expected to miss the series. Little did we know, in a side game at St. Lucia before the first test, we made the acquaintance of Mrs. Croft and Garner. Both about 6 feet 6 inches tall, they were not only fast but generated a lot of bounce. They ran through our batting and we lost the match. However, our confidence was not unduly shattered and we went into the first test expecting it to be a tight match. The first test at Bridgetown was one of the finest I have ever played in. From start to finish, it was completely unpredictable. We batted first and got off to a fine start, largely due to Majid, who was at his peak on this tour. Then Wasim Raja made an unbeaten 117 and, with the late order batsmen, added 202 for the last 4 wickets. Throughout the tour, our batting depended on Majid and Wasim Raja, who were the only players consistently able to get runs against the West Indies pace attack. The formidable West Indian batting lineup and Fredericks, Greenidge, Richards, Kallicharan and Lloyd trended to crack under pressure, and in the first test Sarfraz and I had them in trouble at 183 for 5. The old ball was swinging and not coming onto the bat. Sarfraz and Lloyd and Derek Murray tied down with controlled swing bowling. The new ball was due and Mushtaq wanted to take it. Like most batsmen captains, he had a rather simplistic, programmed approach in such situations. His own vulnerability to pace after the going over he had been given by Lilly in Australia may have reinforced this batsman's eye view of the new ball. Sarfraz had asked me to tell Mushtaq that the new ball would only give the batsman a breathing space. A succession of Pakistani captains, including Mushtaq, couldn't take Sarfraz's unorthodox and unpredictable approach to the game and distrusted him. So I went up to Mushtaq and passed on Sarfraz's logic, but he would not listen. After all, if we were bowling so well with the old ball, what wonders might we not perform with the new one? It didn't work. The new ball came onto the bat and on the bare pitch would neither swing nor seam. Lloyd opened his shoulders and knocked us all over the ground. He went on to make 157 and the West Indies reached 421 in reply to our total of 435. We collapsed to 153 for 9 against Roberts, Croft and Garner in the second innings. Then Wasim Raja and Wasim Bari had a gritty partnership. Their luck held and they put on 133 in 110 minutes for the 10th wicket. Needing 306 for victory, the West Indies were close to losing their first test at Bridgetown since England beat them in 1934-35. They began confidently enough but collapsed after Richards was dismissed for 92. After being reduced to 217 for 8 with 15 minutes plus the last 20 overs to go, they batted out time. Roberts stayed at the wicket for 90 minutes, Holder for 45 and Croft batted through the final 8 overs. In the first innings of the second test at Port of Spain, Colin Croft ran through our batting on a wet pitch, taking 8 for 29. We were dismissed for 180 and with Sarfraz out of the team because of injury, it was up to me to engineer the fight back. Salim Altaf took 2 quick wickets, but I bowled appallingly. I lost my temper after being attacked by Fredericks and Greenidge and became increasingly wild. We batted with greater purpose in the second innings and reached 340. By the time I got it all together for the first time on the tour, it was too late. The West Indies were 150 for 1, chasing 206 when I put in a spell of 3 for 10. But then Wasim Bari dropped Kalikacharan with the West Indies looking distinctly edgy. And it was all over. I was disappointed with my bowling on the tour thus far. Except for that last spell, it had lacked penetration. The third test at Georgetown typified Pakistan's batting performance at the time. In the first innings, we were skittled out for 194. Then after the West Indies had amassed a total of 448, our batting came good and put the match out of reach. In the second innings, Majid made a brilliant 167. The entire top order supported him and we batted for 2 days to save the match. The fourth test was played on a relatively slow pitch, which took some spin. We batted first and made 341, Majid contributing 92 and Mushtaq 121. The West Indies declined from 73 for no wickets to 154 all out. And I bowled with pace and accuracy and movement, taking 4 for 64. The second innings followed a similar pattern. We topped 300 and the West Indies collapsed against Mushtaq's leg spin and the swing of Sarfraz. The series was now tied and everything depended on the final test at Kingston, Jamaica. The pitch at Sabina Park was unusually fast, with an uneven bounce. This was the wicket on which the West Indies had destroyed India the previous winter. 3 Indian batsmen had retired hurt and Bedi had closed India's second innings at 97 with 2 tail-enders yet to bat. There was no doubt that we would also receive our share of short-pitch bowling and would have to bat with great determination. At the end of a long and punishing tour, our batting was showing signs of wear and tear, with only Majid and Wasim Raja displaying any kind of form. Sadiq Mohammed was not the same batsman after being hit on the jaw by Roberts in the third test. Zahir, who had played in only 2 tests so far, was also shaky. Asif Iqbal hadn't sorted out Croft, while Mushtaq was visibly nervous against pace. Javed Miadat, still young and inexperienced, had been dropped after a string of failures in Australia and the West Indies. Despite the presence of 7 specialist batsmen, the lineup didn't inspire much confidence. Before the match, there was nervous talk about the pace and lift that Garner might extract from the pitch. At the same time, the prospect of beating the West Indies on their own turf was exhilarating enough to stiffen our sinews. The mood on the eye of the final test was a heady mixture of bravado and butterflies. The West Indies batted first and were soon in trouble. 56 for 3 with Fredericks, Richards and Lloyd gone. In the intense clammy heat, I felt exhausted after only 6 overs. However, I had taken all 3 wickets and was enjoying the extra pace and bounce. There was still the small matter of Gordon Greenidge's wicket. He played one of the greatest test innings I have seen, exactly 100 out of 280. Greenidge can be orthodox, but he can also be devastating. On that day he produced the best of both styles, mixing concentrated defense and furious assault. The moment he was gone, the West Indies innings folded. I had taken 6 for 90 and was pretty pleased with my performance. 280 was not a large score on a small ground with an extremely fast outfield. We went in to bat 40 minutes before the close on the first day, and before the day was over, 280 might as well have been 500. Andy Roberts bowled 4 extremely quick overs at Majid, and it was apparent that Majid was quite unnerved by this. The shock waves of those overs reverberated through the dressing room. Majid had handled pace better than anyone else throughout the tour, both in Australia and the West Indies, and seeing him rattled had shaken our entire batting lineup. I will never forget the drive from the hotel to the ground the next morning. Hardly a word was spoken. We felt as though we were going to a funeral. Such experienced players should have realized that any fast bowler is capable of a spell in which everything clicks, in which the body is in complete harmony and achieves a perfect rhythm, enabling him to bowl extremely fast and dangerously, but that he cannot produce such spells at will. In the event, Roberts proved unable to bowl with same pace and fire that day. But the damage had been done. Our batsmen were living in fear and got themselves out to wild shots. We were 122 for 5 when Wasim Raja joined Harun Rashid, who was batting sensibly and well. The leg spinner Hofford was bowling. Wasim jumped down the pitch and was lucky not to be stumped. Then the hit Holford for 6 and a few deliveries later hauled out trying to repeat the shot. Wasim had scored over 400 runs in the first 4 tests, and this strange exhibition can only be understood in the context of Robert's spell. Asif committed suicide in a similar fashion. Only Harun, our most recent entrant into Test cricket, took on to the West Indian pace bowlers. I can still remember 2 magnificent sixes over mid-wicket of Garner. For much of Harun's innings, I was at the other end admiring his skill and courage. We were dismissed for 198 and might well have been more than 82 runs behind after such a spineless batting performance. Unfortunately, Wasim Bari, our wicket-keeper, had retired hurt after being hit in the face trying to hook Croft. Majid kept wicket and dropped Greenwich early in the second innings. The West Indian openers eventually put on 183 for the first wicket, as much due to our dejected bowling attack as their good batting. A spineless display of batting often demoralizes the team's bowling attack. By the end of the third day, we realized that we would have to make something close to 400 to win the match. Because the series was tied, the final test was being played over 7 days, including the rest day, in order to produce a result. On the rest day, the 4th day, it became clear that the team had already surrendered. We were booked to fly back to Pakistan on the evening on the final day, but the players were so anxious to leave that new bookings were made for the evening and the penultimate day. An astonishing admission of a general lack of resolve. Mushtaq was so obviously afraid of fast bowling that he was hardly in a position to rally the team, nor did he try to. In fact, he made matters more difficult for himself by questioning the bowling actions of Roberts and Garner in a pre-match interview, not the smartest way of appeasing the tormentors. Set 442 to win, we were soon 51 for 4. Asif Iqbal then played an innings that least partly salvaged our reputation, if not our self-respect. He put on dazzling exhibition of stroke play and notched up another incredible century. During a partnership of 115 for the 6th wicket with Wasim Raja, he protected him from Andy Roberts. Watching from the dressing room, we were puzzled when they refused some easy singles to third man and fine leg, and Wasim later admitted he had told Asif that it would be better for the team if Asif took on Roberts while he handled the rest of the attack. When I went in to join Asif, I knew I was in for some rough treatment. Roberts and I had exchanged bouncers throughout the series. The crowd, sensing what was coming, chanted "Blood, blood." Roberts was in the middle of his second really quick spell of the match. Needless to say, I knew that not many deliveries were going to be pitched up, so I was ready on the back foot almost before the ball was delivered. The first 2 balls hit my gloves before I was halfway through the hook shot. The next one was pitched up and I got a couple of runs. The fourth was one of the fastest deliveries I have ever faced. Before I could notice anything, it had kissed my cap, just touched Derek Murray's gloves, and gone for bites. An inch closer and it would probably have ended my career. After this experience, I had no hesitation in donning a helmet the moment they came into use. I went on to make 22. We totaled 304, 301 and lost the match by 140 runs. Despite the fiasco of the final test, it had been a close and absorbing series. My only regret is that I didn't play another test series in West Indies until 1988. During the tour, Tony Greig had come up to the West Indies on behalf of Kerry Packer to recruit players for a World 11 that would play a series against the Australian team in the coming winter. The World 11 would be chosen from a squad of 14 players, 4 South Africans, 4 West Indians, 3 Englishmen and 3 Pakistanis. Asif, Majid and myself. I was thrilled to be included in the squad. Only a year earlier, I had been unsure of my place in the Pakistan side. Yet, I would soon be playing with the world's best in Australia, a magnificent place to play cricket for a lot of money. As far as my test career was concerned, I would only miss one series, England's tour of Pakistan in the winter 1977 to 1988, or so I thought.